Come on in, folks. We are adjusting the audio, adjusting the video. We are in control. My goal is to see how many Snickers I can get out of David in the first 3 minutes of my banter here. That was two.
Nice.
Welcome, folks, one and all. Get your audio all set up. We will begin here in a few seconds. Here they come. All right. I'll tell you what. How about I love a good pre-webinar question to get us all started. Make sure we know where the chat function is. You will notice in today's Zoom, you have both a chat box and a Q&A box. So what I would like you to do to show me that you're listening is in the chat box. Let's use the chat box for comments to each other. Answer this question for me. Answer the question, how would the perfect AI assistant help you in your current role today? So your current role, if you had the perfect AI assistant, what would that AI assistant do? Stick it in the chat, and that will give us some fodder for pre-show banter here, right, David? Answer all my emails. Israel, I am down with that. Yep. Make Google Slides? Yeah. Some of these, they can already do, folks. We could do some of these. Look at all these coming in. Content writing. Yeah, we're kind of there. They need a little direction, but we're getting there. Schedule meetings for you. I like that one. I like that. Answer the question before you asked. Phil, you're looking for that mind reader, the mind reader chat bot. They're working on it. I actually have heard scary things. They are working on that, believe it or not. These are good. These are good. Free up 2 hours of my day. That's all we all want. That's all we all want, David. Just give me 2 hours back in my day, please, chatbot. Leave me alone, Jennifer. Thank you. Beautiful. All righty, gang. We are, looks like we are logged in. I've got notes. David is there, logged in as well. I think it is time to officially kick us off. There we go. As you're answering that, you've noticed you've put those in the chat. That was excellent of you. There is a QA box. The Q&A box we will use as our guest is speaking today. If you have questions you would like me to toss over to the guest, probably we'll get to those after the presentation. Stick those in the Q&A box so I can keep track of them over there. If you just want to make witty comments or make fun of me, do that in the chat. That is also allowed. And with that, I am Eddie Gordon, courseware designer here at Pragmatic Institute. It is lovely to have you with us at another of our Pragmatic Institute product chats. David, if you would click over to the next slide. You may have seen some of my work in the courseware department over at the Pragmatic alumni community. The community is all about exchanging real life experiences and conversations with other product folks. You can get connected with resources and offerings and find out about sessions like this one to benefit your career. If you are not an alumni yet, or haven't been in the Pragmatic alumni community, you are not doing yourself any favors. That is the resource of resources. All you got to do, if you have taken a Pragmatic Institute course, you're an alumni and you got access. So head over there to the Pragmatic alumni community, pragmaticinstitute.com/community to get in on that action. Next slide, David, please. Today, we are talking about ways that we can utilize AI and data to accurately segment persona types and customers, along with ways to apply those findings to deliver more personalized experiences. And I have the great pleasure then of introducing product leader David Tang. You like that? I just gave you a new title, David. Product leader, David Tang. I get to read your bio now. Are you ready to be embarrassed? It's quick.
Oh
We'll make
boy.
it painless. David has well over a decade of product management experiences, specializing in data science and AI. He is most passionate about creating innovative products and experiences that solve customer problems and deliver value. With a strong background in AI and machine learning, SaaS product strategy, and customer journey touch points, David works to deliver impact and user-centric product that delights. David, the delight is all ours today. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Eddie.
Are you ready to make us all smarter on this topic?
I hope so.
All right. I hand the PowerPoint to you, my friend. Do it.
All right. Thank you so much. That was an amazing intro. I've watched some of the other webinars that Eddie has kind of hosted, and I'm always amazed by how he kind of bring to life other people's kind of background. So thank you for that amazing intro again. So yeah, let's get started. Just want to add a little bit more about myself. I think Eddie did a great job sharing some of my background. I'm David, and I'm a product manager with a passion for storytelling around data. That just basically means that I like numbers, and specifically how numbers can help me convince people around me to work on solving interesting problems. So Eddie mentioned I have, over 10 years of experience. They actually span across like marketing, consulting, data science, and product. So a very interesting mix of varieties. You may be able to tell that I grew up in Chicago based on the schools that I attend. I study economics in undergrad and got my MBA from Kellogg. Now I live in San Jose with my wife, our cute 2-year-old daughter, and an equally energetic corgi. And before I go into the presentation, I just also want to share my favorite TV show, which is Devil's Plan. It came out quite recently on Netflix. It's a Korean reality game show that has a lot of numbers, a lot of brain teasers. They bring in a lot of smart people, and there's drama, and there's intrigue, and there's teamwork. It's very fun to watch. Promise I didn't get sponsored by Netflix or anything. It's just a really fun show. So that being said, let's actually start with some numbers today. So according to a 2021 study by McKinsey, 71% of consumers expect companies to deliver personalized interactions. If we look at the figure to the right, we can also see that personalization has great influence over a lot of customers' decision to purchase, repurchase, and recommend to other people around them. This may not be a big surprise to many of you. Your favorite products and apps are probably already infused with a lot of personalization. It is a new norm, almost a necessity today. And we are increasingly expecting as consumers from products that we interact with from the get-go to have those personalization. And personalized experiences really demonstrate that a company that we interact with values its customers and is committed to meeting their individual needs. This is important because it helps foster brand stickiness as well as customer loyalty so that we continue to use their product on an ongoing basis, and most often also pay for those services. And personalization isn't possible without knowledge about customers. And that knowledge really lies in customer data, which is something that we will spend some time talking about today. So before we dive into the topic, I also like to just take a quick moment to lay out some definitions for a couple of terms that I'll be using throughout the presentation. These are my interpretation of these terms within the context of the topic. There are probably other definitions that are also equally valid. First is customer segment. Customer segment is a group of customers who share similar characteristics, behaviors, or needs. I'll go into a few more examples later on. Persona is a fictional representation of an ideal customer based on real data and insights. Customer segments and persona are actually very closely related. You can think of customer segments as the raw ingredients or the building blocks for a persona. As a product manager, one of my jobs is to articulate the ideal customer profile to my team. And persona is a powerful tool to really facilitate that alignment within my organization. So everyone I work with is clear about who the customers are and what do they need. In many organizations, this is sometimes also a joint effort between product management and product marketing teams. Below those two terms, we have AI and machine learning. And AI machine learning is really just a collection of techniques to help identify and also make predictions on the patterns in customer behavior and preferences. And some of that fuel comes from data that form customer segments. Personalization is really a particular outcome of creating unique and relevant experience for customers. And techniques like AI machine learning can really help in driving some of that personalization. Okay, so let's put the definition aside and keep rolling. So as mentioned earlier, customer segment are the building blocks for understanding your customers. There are many different ways to actually think about customer segments. Here, what I have here are four most common ways. One is behavior. Behavior segments focus on a customer's direct interaction with a product. They're very commonplace today, and largely due to the fact that it's quite easy for data about behavior. Behavior data are collected, through in-product analytics. Demographic segments contain facts about the customers themselves. Not all of them are relevant for every task at hand, but some of them may also not be used for personalization due to privacy laws. So it's very important to consult your legal and privacy teams before collecting or use these data. Geographic segments are all about where the customers are. This is relevant for having functionality or capability around language or locale. And it's even more so if the product itself is very dependent on location data, such as Uber or Yelp. Psychographic segments contain sort of an abstraction of a lot of customers' various attributes, things like attitudes, goals, interests, personalities, values. The list can go on and on. These data are sometimes pretty hard to collect, and they often rely on surveys, interviews, or even collecting that through third-party vendors. As I mentioned earlier, you often actually see persona archetypes consist of several combination of these segments that kind of present a cohesive story on ideal customer type. But the segments and sort of the data that go into these segments are the building blocks. One important thing to know is that customer segments will change over time because customers themselves, like you and I, we also evolve and we move from one segment to another. So it's important to reevaluate customer segments for your product from time to time to stay relevant in today's competitive landscape. So let's actually do a quick exercise. Everybody can see the screen in front of me with a lot of the Adobe product logos. So how many of these Adobe product can folks identify from the list? We'll take maybe like 5 seconds. People can just type in the chat box if they want. And maybe Eddie can tell me.
I am a graphic designer. I'm an Adobe guy. And I saw this slide in your deck and I did not do as well as I thought I was going to do. Somebody typed 7 in the chat, I see.
Good.
That is very good. Mostly 3s.
Okay.
Couple 2s, couple 0s. There's a 5.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's actually better than what I expect. I think when I first joined Adobe, I was just as clueless as most people here. And
Jared identified -3. I just want to poor Jared. We can sympathize with that.
So what's funny is this is not even the full list. If you actually visit Adobe's full catalog, I have a link down below, you can actually find more than 90 products, almost as many as there are elements in the periodic table. And some people actually said this is the kind of Adobe periodic table. So, how would you know which of these product is the right one for you just by looking at this? Even if I give you the product's names and maybe a short description, does that help? The good news is that's not how Adobe or most companies sell their product. They don't just blast you with a bunch of logos and product names, or I hope that's not the case for some companies. Let's take a look at this example, which gives us a little tease of what some segments might be. So if you go to Adobe's product page today, you can actually see some examples of segments at play. So on the very top of that screenshot, in the green dotted line, we have tabs that break out some of our products by individuals, business, student teachers, school and universities. So this makes sense because these customer groups likely have different goals, different product behaviors. They can kind of self-select and pick the right tab and go from there. On the left kind of nav, you can see some product categories, photo, graphic design, video, and others. This also makes sense because they align closely to distinct creative professions or creative mediums. They also represent, they could represent aspirational persona, if you will, for those who wish to grow their skills in any of these categories. So this is a pretty good start, right? It can kind of help customers find which product might be a good fit. But this is just better organization. It's actually not personalization. The customers still need to do the legwork to find the right product for themselves. So how can we do a better job? Here's another example. If I visit adobe.com and while logged in to my account, this is actually the page I see today. You can see that Adobe welcomes me back, uses my name, and personalizes my experience in two other ways. One, it gives me a direct link to launch Acrobat Online, which is actually included in my Pay Acrobat plan. Two, it has a little kind of a gray box that stands out. It offers me an upgrade option to their Creative Cloud All Apps, which is their all-inclusive bundle. If I log out of my account or visit this particular homepage, actually just adobe.com, in incognito mode, I won't see this at all. And instead, I'll see a more generic homepage that probably we all will see if we log into Adobe without logging in. So under the hood, I know that my experience has been personalized, and it's driven by Adobe's knowledge about me, my persona, and a lot of data that powers that personalization. So this is actually just scratching the surface. More advanced personalization actually can only be achieved through more advanced techniques like AI and machine learning. So let's shift gear and talk about some of that. Before we dive in, just a quick overview for those who may not be familiar with AI and machine learning. Just a few quick terms. So AI is essentially a simulation of human intelligence in machines, allowing them to think and learn like us. Machine learning is a subset of that, where it's an algorithm learning from patterns in the data and improve tasks without explicit programming. Machine learning is well established in a lot of business applications today already, and especially when it comes to personalization engines. Deep learning is even a further subset of machine learning. It utilizes deep neural network with multiple layers that process data and make complex decisions. So large language models such as ChatGPT falls into this category. So let's talk through a few examples of how this applies to personalization. The first example I want to share is the propensity to churn. If you have grumpy customers, they will eventually stop paying. So retention is a very common challenge for a lot of the subscription-based product and services out there today. We often call it the leaky bucket problem, because you have a bucket, you keep pouring water, but then there's a hole that, water keeps leaking. The challenge is that by the time a customer is grumpy enough to cancel, it may already be too late for the company to address their concerns and the reasons that they're canceling. Therefore, the goal of a propensity to churn model is to identify persona types most at risk of churning and mitigating that risk early on so they don't even get to that point. So some model input examples can consist of a lot of customer behavior data that's collected through the products they use. Things like product usage frequency, how often they abandon a project if they start the actual software, but they actually don't complete a project. Time since last visited. If they visited the cancellation page, the commerce page in their account where they can cancel. If they submitted some support tickets because some issues came up. So this is not an exhaustive list, but just kind of give you a taste of what might go into a propensity to churn model. And example output of the model will consist of customer ID that you see on the left, and its corresponding churn score. So the churn score here represents a probability that the customer might churn. Doesn't mean that it will absolutely churn, just a probability based on shared patterns of behaviors of past customers that actually churn. So in this example, the first two customers would be most likely our top candidate to flag for follow-up action. So some outcomes, some examples of preventative measures would include launching tailored educational campaign to help these customers better use the product, conduct proactive customer outreach to your most valuable VIP customers, and then also creating some incentive that perhaps can increase engagement or usage of the product. As you can imagine, comparing to intervening when a grumpy customer is trying to cancel, this is going to be more effective in reducing that overall churn and retaining the customer in the long run. Now, the other side of the coin is equally valid as an example. What if we have customers who are very happy using our product? There's actually some opportunities there. They may be good fit for some of our other products, or they may be interested in additional features, capabilities, if we sell some add-ons that can add those capabilities. This is where the propensity to buy can really help us. So the goal of a propensity to buy model is to identify persona types most likely to spend more, whether it's to purchase additional products or upgrade to a more expensive bundle, like the example you saw earlier on my logged in homepage. Some data inputs in this case might include usage frequency, project completion rate, most used product, most used features, recent visit to the product page. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. And example outputs of this model would consist of the customer ID and the corresponding buy or upgrade score for every potential product that might potentially be recommended. And these scores really represent the probability that these customers might purchase or upgrade based on all the shared patterns of behaviors of past customers that actually did that. So in this example, our first two customers in the list are good candidates for product X, and both first and third customers are good candidates for upgrading to product Y. Some of the outcomes that we would kind of drive with this model would include a personalized email campaign to promote the next product that the customer might want to try or buy. In-product notifications to kind of let them know there are some opportunity to upgrade to a plan that has more capability. It could actually even help the company prioritize their customer support resource to focus on these high value customers that have the potential opportunity to purchase more down the road. So these more targeted approach means customers are more likely to respond to these tailored recommendations, thus increasing their lifetime value for companies such as Adobe. I got one more example. So in this one, I actually picked my favorite app, Duolingo. So for those of you who may not be familiar with Duolingo, it's an app that helps you learn a new language. So I'm currently using it to learn Japanese. Duolingo makes learning new languages very fun. They have a lot of gamification elements in there. It also leverages machine learning personalization for what's called adaptive learning. What that means is each learner gets a unique and personalized curriculum that adapts and evolves with the learner. The goal of adaptive learning is to identify learners who are struggling with the material and help them succeed in grasping the concept in their unique way. If you check out their blog, they actually have a very extensive data science and research blog that talks about a lot of their methodologies. They share some examples of data inputs in that blog. Things like the lesson completion rate, how much error the learner made, the amount of time they spend in the app, what's the most recent topic that they learned, what's the difficulty level of those lessons, and what's the learner level in terms of the overall language progression. Again, this is probably not an exhaustive list that they work with as well. Some of the outcome in this case include adjusting the content difficulty as the learner progress, and then offering opportunities to correct past mistakes. They also introduce tough vocabularies, sometimes in new contexts to make it a little bit easier. Sometimes they even ask some silly scenarios to kind of give you a chuckle. So they better engage you with the learning experience, so you will stick around to try it again. So I personally experience almost all of these personalized outcomes that I just described above. And they work really well in keeping me engaged compared to other language learning apps that I've used in the past. In this case, I also promise Duolingo did not sponsor me. I just love using their product. And as a product manager, I admire how effective products are tailored to my learning through personalization. If any of you listening have your favorite app that you use frequently, I think it's awesome to take a closer look at the various ways that particular app personalizes to your experience. It's kind of fun exercise to do and something you can often learn quite a bit about. All right. So we went through a few examples of machine learning model. Let's now look at some recipes for how we can build one. So there are 6 steps. I'm kind of go through them pretty quickly. I think any of these could be a webinar of its own. First is just defining very clearly what you aim to achieve with personalization. And personalization may not be the only goal you're trying to achieve with machine learning model. It's just the one in the context of this topic we're going through. Whether it's reducing churn, improving engagement, work closely with your stakeholders so you align the goal and the scope of the project early on. Next is gathering relevant data from different sources that you collect and integrating that in a more unified way. This is where you work very closely with your data science and data engineering counterparts to fully understand, are there gaps or limitations in the data that you collect? Making sure that data quality is paramount in this case, removing any duplicates, take care of the missing values, normalizing the data for overall consistency. Next, this is mostly handled by the data science and data engineering team. Right? They train and select models based on the historical data, using various techniques like cross-validation to ensure robustness. And then they will analyze model performance with you and then come up with some strategies to fine-tune it based on various parameters for better results. After that, you would integrate this model into whatever platform or product that would be exposed to the end customer, end user, ensuring that all the work that you put in can actually can be used efficiently on the other side, and can actually be by driving the specific result you're looking for. It's important to continuously monitor afterwards the performance in production, and potentially retraining it periodically with new data. So if you look at the right column, you can probably see that the bulk of the time you're going to be spending is actually around collecting and cleaning data. That's because if there's any issues there, it sort of invalidates a lot of the steps that happen after. So this is the most critical step to do right and to spend the most of the time. Okay, so now that you have a machine learning model, how do you actually measure its performance, both in its inception as well as over time? So this slide has a lot of content, and I think this could be a webinar or two of its own as well. In this case, I will just cover it in a high level. Basically, I want to let you all know from a product manager perspective what's kind of important to understand when you're working with your data science and data engineering teams at evaluating the model success. The real big key takeaway here, if there's one thing you take away from this slide, is that a high number, a high score in any of these metrics generally indicates good performance, but the choice of which metric to prioritize actually depends on the specific goals and the requirements of your model's applications and end result. So kind of give you an example, if you look at accuracy, this is sort of a good high-level catch-all KPI that's really well suited for recommendation system. Sentiment analysis, image recognition, but there's a flaw, as many of these KPIs have some pros and cons. The flaw is if your training data is not well balanced, and there's more of certain type of data that could potentially skew your training data, it actually invalidates or reduce the true performance of your predictions. Precision recall and F1 score can sometimes be more targeted to whatever bias that actually makes sense for your end application, say spam filters, search engines, or fraud detections. Those cases, you want to minimize the false positives. So you actually want some of those biases for false positive to exist in your model, therefore producing a higher quality product. So there are specific instances where precision will be preferred over recall, where it actually minimizes false negatives, which is good applications for cybersecurity detection, emergency response, parental or content control, for example. And the F1 score is kind of a balance between precision and recall. It's actually a great replacement or sort of addition to accuracy when there is an unbalanced class distribution in training data. Again, there is no single KPI that should be the sole focus when you work on evaluating your model. It's important to understand the goal, the application, and maybe several KPIs that can help you fairly evaluate the performance over time. Okay, before I wrap up, I just want to leave everyone here 6 tips to improve their overall success in building a strong data-driven persona and effective personalization engine. The #1 priority, I think I mentioned this earlier, is to have a very clear business goal. And that business goal should align closely with the customer value and impact you're trying to drive, whether it's help customer activate, use the product for the first time, help them engage with the product on an ongoing basis, help retain them for the long term. It's very important to set that up front and make sure everyone's aware that's what you're doing. Next, you want to implement robust monitoring system to track the performance over time. We talk about a few KPIs that, kind of has its pros and cons. It's important to know that machine learning models can degrade over time if you don't have the latest data, or just due to the fact that customer segments also change and evolve over time. So it may become less effective. So scheduling regular retraining of the models, look at what other new relevant customer data you could collect and incorporate, or even remove obsolete data that are less of a predictor of the behavior that you want to drive, just to ensure that they all adapt to the evolving user behavior and preferences that you're trying to understand, and you're trying to kind of build personalization around. Next, you want to define clear threshold for action. So we saw in a few examples, there's some probability, 79%, 81%. What is that percentage point that makes sense for us to take a specific action? So defining that early on is important, but also you want to evaluate the model performance as well, and then see, just how big is your customer size that falls into specific thresholds. Depending on the action you're trying to drive, some action may be less risky, such as sending an email. You may not want to send it to a lot of people. So looking at the overall customer size of those segments as determined by the threshold, say if everyone above 80% of that score would get an email, is that a right amount of people that you want to be contacting and personalizing that experience? So, work with your counterparts that these particular applications will impact, and help them to make sure they have a voice in that as well. That will be one important ingredient for success. Next is you want to communicate to the users themselves how personalization works, and sometimes give them some options, potential option to opt out of them. This is particularly true for a lot more sensitive kind of applications that you want to give the user the control over their data. And if they do not want personalization, you want to be able to give them that level of control. Some jurisdiction actually require you to do that, so you don't have a choice. Lastly, it's to ensure that your personalization engine adheres to the data privacy laws and user privacy standards. So absolutely work closely with your legal and compliance counterparts to make sure that is that you're aware of what those boundaries are, and that those teams are every step of the way also fully clear of what your potential machine learning model and personalization engine is trying to accomplish, and what goes into those models. Okay, and that's a wrap for me. I promised Eddie that I would hand it back to him, and then give some time for Q&A.
And you did. You weren't greedy. Awesome. David, we have got some questions. So I hope you've got your PR representative handy, because we're going to grill you, man. Are you ready for this?
Let's go.
We'll be nice. We'll be nice. I definitely want to start with, folks, people are popping their questions over into the Q&A tab. That is the way to do it. So if you've got a question on the tip of your tongue that you'd like me to toss over to David, stick it there in the Q&A panel, and I will give it to him. David, I want to start with this one from Jin to represent all those folks for whom this is a totally new world, right? Jin said, I am totally new to this stuff. How are we supposed to create these models? Is there some sort of software or plugin we can use? And I want to start, because I remember in your presentation, there was a moment when you said, at this point, you would talk to your data scientists, right? You said that at one point, which is obviously going to be part of this answer. But for those of us that maybe don't have data scientists, I don't have a team of data scientists that I can call on at any time. Can I still take advantage of this advancement in technology? Is there software that I can play with as a newbie that won't get me into trouble, but that might still benefit my work in product, David?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Understand a lot of businesses and companies may not have adequate resource to help the team get start with, building a personalization engine, let alone a lot of the underlying requirements to get started. I think for small, medium businesses, there are absolutely tons of vendors that they serve kind of two type of services. One, they help you monitor and capture a lot of in-product analytics. And two, they're able to serve insights on, hey, here's where the opportunities are based on the insights that you collect. And third, they may have the ability for you to inject elements of personalizations in your product in a lot of various customer touch points. So one that I see very common are kind of onboarding experiences. There are so many. I actually can't think of one on the top of my head. There are a lot out there as you just Google around that helps you layer on top an onboarding experience within your product. And kind of help you segment what kind of customer they might be so they get a personalized onboarding experience. So I think the key here is understand what are the goals you want to focus, first of all, going back to my kind of tips, is, and then search for particular product and services that are adept in addressing those particular problems that you're trying to solve. They, of course, if you're working with them, kind of injecting that into your product, probably need you to integrate them into your existing product. So there would be some kind of engineer work involved for you to bring those two pieces together. Some products are a little bit easier to integrate than others. So it kind of really depends on how much personalization, how much depth, and how much data you would expose your own product to these vendors. But they are most likely going to want to win your business, and they're mostly going to, well, explain to you what are the steps that will require for you to integrate with their platform and to kind of drive the outcome you're looking for. So it depends on the situation. It depends on how comfortable you're willing to kind of, not export, but kind of expose some of your customer data and experience to these vendors. Then they will help you with some of those specific touch points that can then be used for personalization.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in short, this is a new technology. It is a big technology, and we are going to need to partner with some specialists to get the most use out of it. Is that the case?
Yes, absolutely. And
yeah,
it should not be this is never a one-man it's not a one-man workshop. You absolutely want to involve some other parties, unless you're like a solopreneur and you really don't have anyone else to work directly with. Then you can kind of identify some potentially vendors that are well integrated into your entire kind of product development lifecycle. Maybe you're already partnered with them, and they may have some capability that already exists that you can kind of expose to your customers.
Yeah. You reminded me, as you were answering that one, of a follow-up question about the segmentation and targeting. During product development, what methodology are you using to figure out who to segment or who to target? Even before you've decided what your features are going to be, are you thinking about what is the data that we have? What can we learn from that? Okay, can we build a feature that addresses that data? Is that the order of operations? Or instead, are you going to the market looking for a problem that you can solve, and then going back to the data and saying, how can I utilize this data to segment further down? What's the methodology? What's the order of operations that's most recommended there?
Yeah, I actually have a slide that I did not share. It's in the appendix.
I gotcha.
It's in the appendix. And basically it's saying data is valuable and important every step of the way in your product development lifecycle, whether it's building new features for an existing product or building brand new products. The amount of data and sort of the level of detail of data you can actually acquire will vary depending on which area you are in your product development kind of journey. But I think ultimately you're building a product to solve customer pain points. So you're going to have to collect some information on what are those pain points that you're trying to solve. You may not actually have something that customer can interact with to collect it firsthand. So you would need secondhand data, qualitative data. But once you have something that your customers are interacting with, something that is absolutely critical in building the product itself is to incorporate product analytics. And there are absolute vendors that can help you put those things together. So you're collecting things like funnel data, how users are interacting with your application. And then from there, you can gain some initial insights. And this is a process that never really ends. You may be able to do something very simple from a personalization perspective, even like the one that I showed you earlier with, I purchased Adobe Acrobat product. So there are some tiers of the product that it's going to cost more that are sort of an upgrade. Maybe we'll start there and expose these upgrade options just to everyone who purchased product A. Right? That's actually not super sophisticated, and you can do that pretty easily. And then as you're able to collect more information when customers are using data, you can bring those additional features, potential additional methodologies of exposing, sort of incorporating the data to drive a more robust personalization engine over time.
Brilliant. Really cool question from Brian here. Brian says, I know we've been talking about user personas, but have you used AI to create or enhance buyer personas? Is there a difference in technique there? Obviously, your buyer personas aren't already in your apps. You can't gather this information from them in that way. Can we still utilize the technology to formulate and improve our buyer personas?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Buyers sometimes are not users. Absolutely. This is often the case for, businesses. They may have a decision maker that purchased a product, but it's actually the people on the team that are more frequently using your product and capabilities. So from that perspective, you're not going to be able to collect a lot of data points that directly link back to the buyers, but know that buyers are stakeholders, the users are stakeholders that are directly tied to the buyers. So insights you collect on the users themselves does intricately link to the motivation and the decision-making criteria of the buyers. So you absolutely can influence the buyers through what you know about the users. There may be other more abstraction that can come from more qualitative information, but not something that you can kind of do from a personalization engine perspective. But to kind of give you some examples, there are many product recently that have grew significantly, very quickly over time, not because they target the buyers, but because they actually target the users first. Slack is a great example. A lot of their sales strategy is to create a freemium tier. And a lot of users just find it super convenient to use. And teams within organizations just start using it kind of on their own. And then over time, like 50% of the organization is already using Slack in one way or another. Some opted in to pay for them. So the buyers are going to be influenced by the users in that case.
Cool.
So that's kind of one way to think about that.
Very cool. Awesome. Great question from Evelina here. Evelina says, given the importance of keeping personas relevant and up to date, I was wondering how frequently we should revisit and update them. Also, are there any particular methods or approaches you'd recommend for the updating process? Now, I know as a user, there have been times when, some ad campaign is targeting me and it's not something I want to buy anymore. I wanted to buy it 2 years ago, but they have not updated their algorithms or whatever. How often do I buy a mattress? Really, guys, right? So how often should we jump in there and update the info that we have? Can we automate that in some way? Is there some way to say to the AI, hey, figure out how often a person buys this thing and maybe they don't need that anymore? Or can we kind of hand that off to the AI?
Yeah, and you touch on some pretty kind of useful criteria to kind of think about this problem. Is it is going to be dependent on the outcome, dependent on the product and the purchase cycle for the customers. I mentioned a little bit earlier that model performance can degrade over time. So one way to kind of monitor and keep in check is to keep track of the performance metric and see how effective they are at continuing predicting user behavior. And is it actually continued to drive the outcome you're looking for, or is that percentage improvement decreasing over time? Those could be indicators that it might be worthwhile to revisit. And other ways to kind of think about it is business often see like major technology innovations or sometimes shock in the system that affect customers' purchase behavior. If you have competitors come into the space or kind of a new tech that really changed the way customer interact with the product, those could all affect how users think about buying your product, using your product. And you will be able to see user behavior change both in terms of how customers are buying, but also whether they're switching to a competitor. So if you're seeing some of these shock in the system and change in the system, it may also be worthwhile to think about what are some of the input variables that may affect that. Is that something you can collect from the users? Is that something you could incorporate into the model to improve the prediction over time?
Brilliant. David, here, a question about the churn scores. A few questions about the churn scores. People seem to really like that idea. Here is one. Would a customer who is not engaging with the product because they don't understand it, and a customer not engaging because maybe we're not solving the right problem for them, would they have similarly high churn scores? And if that's the case, how do we know what action to take or whether any action can be taken at all in that instance?
Yep, that's a fantastic question. And that's a very important kind of problem to address when you work on a machine learning model. Is you're going to be able to get a score that's a composite of factors that come from various user actions and behaviors. And oftentimes machine learning model is not going to say, factor A is the one that's really making, that's kind of pushing the level up for the particular outcome. So one way to kind of dig into this a little bit further is to understand what are the potential levers that are overarchingly impacting this churn score. And then once you identify a high churn score for, say, particular customers, are there certain attributes that could be highlighted that could be a potential explanation? So things like if you know a customer, so some of the attributes that I mentioned earlier could just be as simple as yes or no. Has the customer reach out to customer support? Has the customer visited the cancellation page, right? So when those customers, are yes along those variables and have a high churn score, you potentially want to personalize your targeted kind of your messaging a little bit differently than someone who has those particular variables as no, because they haven't visited the cancellation page, they haven't contacted customer support. Those are potentially ways for you to kind of glean as proxies whether they're struggling with a product, or they may be, potentially thinking about, whether they're struggling using a product, or they may be churning from other reasons, such as it's too expensive, or that there's actually a better product that's better suited for them. There's a little bit of art and science involved in this as well, because a model is never going to give you all the answers. So sometimes you need to try a few different tactics before you get it right.
There it is. Good. I want to take this chance to talk to our B2B crowd. We've got the B2C folks and we've got the B2B folks. We don't want to leave them out. So Gaurav asks, can you share an end-to-end example in a B2B context where we could use this technology? Put you on the
B2B
spot, didn't I?
context.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of similarities across B2B and B2C. The key in terms of driving personalization is really understand, like if you have product that both serve B2B and B2C, then you want to have specific segmentations for those two type of customers. There will likely be unique outcomes that B2C customers want that is not significant for B2B, and there may be some that overlaps the two. If you only have B2B customers, then the important thing is really to define early on what are some of the outcomes that you're trying to drive. And so a great place to start is actually just look at some existing data analytic you have on customers, right? What are the areas that you're seeing underperformance? What are some friction points that exist for your customer? Come up with a hypothesis of what that might be, and then see what are some opportunities that you can address that through personalization or other potential models that can solve the issue. You know, it's not the case that every problem can be solved with machine learning models or personalization. Sometimes it's about understanding specific feature sets, whether that actually solve the customer's pain point. In that case, it's about, hey, how can I refine that feature set so it actually do the job it does. But I think overall, the workflow in terms of solving B2C and B2B isn't too drastically different.
Okay, good. I wanna give you a chance to talk about some of the things that can go wrong here. We've got bias, we've got manipulation, these sorts of things that can go wrong. I read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I know things can go horribly wrong when we're trying to invent a human intelligence parallel, right? What have you seen that you would warn us against? How do we avoid it? One that I think of, you were mentioning Duolingo, right? It does an incredible job of reaching out to me when I'm not practicing. I feel like it uses manipulation and I don't appreciate that. How can we ensure that our AIs are utilizing things like empathy instead of manipulation? Or what other things have you seen that we need to avoid and be cautious of, like bias and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no one golden rule to kind of address pitfalls when it comes to, mitigating some downsides of machine learning personalization outcomes. I think there will always be customers that appreciate personalization, and then there's those that want to run away. So first and foremost, you want to give, depending on the type of personalization and the degree that you're providing, you may want to provide the option for people to turn it off completely. So I think that's always something to think about when you're designing some solutions that can help, but leave room for people to say, no, I don't really want this.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Second is, work closely with your counterparts that also share your goal and may have additional sets of eyes, because it's really hard for any one of us to come up with all potential scenarios of downsides. So involving more people that are aligned with the objective, that have ideas, that can put themselves in the shoes of the customers, and then even better, talk to customers themselves. Is this something we do that will help you, make you feel like it's saving you time, making things more convenient, or is it scaring you off? Those could be early indicators to help you decide if you want to move forward, or design it in a way that is not as intrusive, that still keep the overall customer experience centered without being too creepy. Those are things that, it's actually a little bit more art than science. So it involves you talking with more people, because no one person can really understand all possible outcomes. And we need to talk to others to kind of identify those pitfalls.
Oh my goodness, David, I am really sad right now because we are approaching our time, and I know all these folks need to get back to their jobs, but I love talking to an expert in this field. This is so fascinating. It is the future, and I just want to sit here and gab with you all day. I won't, for your benefit, I won't do that, because we had so many questions we couldn't get to. Where can folks reach out to you if they would like to contact you and ask some more questions, David?
Yes, so I have my LinkedIn URL here. Feel free to go on LinkedIn and at me. I'm not a big social media person, so you're not going to find me on Twitter or X, as they call it now, or other places. So this is a great place to reach out to me. Feel free to connect me. Drop me a note. Say, hey, watch your webinar. Got some more questions. Love to hear your thoughts. I would love to, add all of you as well and kind of respond that way. So, yeah.
Brilliant. Folks, be sure to join us for the next In Our Product Chat series. That happens November 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to welcome pricing leader Michael Jordan of Qualtrics for a conversation on analytics and strategies for informing key pricing decisions. Don't miss that one. And now, David, it is that sad time of parting. I must bid you adieu. My friend, you have made us all smarter for having been here with you today. Thank you so much for not just answering our questions, but giving us more questions to think about. I loved it today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. And thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic, gang. Have a great rest of your week. We will see you again next time.